Welcome to the Saturday Slam and Jam here on the Athletic NBA Daily. Today, we're talking about Jimmy Butler. We're talking about the dominance of the Cavaliers. And we talk to Brian Geisinger, who joins us to talk about the Charlotte Hornets. You're about to get an education on the Charlotte Hornets. But first, Al, tell me about the top stories this week.
Andrew, our top story this week was what Santa brought down the chimney this year, because on Christmas Day, we got an incredible run of games. On the first game of Christmas, the New York Knicks beat the Spurs 117-114, and in his Christmas Day debut, Victor Wembanyama showed up big with 42 points and 18 rebounds, but it was the Knicks who got the win, led by Mikal Bridges, who scored a season-high 41 points. The Knicks have won 9 in a row as of Friday morning and are now 24-10, only a game back of the Celtics for the second seed in the East. By the time you listen to this, though, that 9-game winning streak will have come up against the OKC Thunder 13-game winning streak. So we'll have to see who has survived as of Saturday morning. On the second game of Christmas, we got Dallas and Minnesota, which looked like it was going to be a snoozer. Minnesota led by 22 entering the fourth, but then the Mavs woke up. Dallas outscored Minnesota 31-15 in the final frame, getting the game to within 2 with a minute left. Kyrie, who had 39 in the game, had a shot to put the Mavs up with 36 seconds left, but missed it, and the Wolves got the win 105-99. An important note from this game, Luka Doncic left the game early with a strained calf that will likely keep him out for at least the next month. On the third game of Christmas, it was Sixers at Celtics. The Sixers are finally getting healthy with all 3 of their stars in the lineup, though that was briefly in doubt when Joel Embiid fell during pregame warmups and went back to the locker room. He was fine, though, able to play, false alarm, scored 27 points. Tyrese Maxey added 33 and 12 assists in the game, helping the Sixers get the massive 118-114 win in Boston. And that win was part of a nice stretch where Philly had won 10 of 13, though they have dropped their last 2. They sit at 13-19, 11th in the East. And then on the fourth game of Christmas, we got the old guy Super Bowl, Lakers at Warriors. And once again, LeBron and Steph put on a show, with both being the leading scorers for their teams. Steph scored 38 to LeBron's 31, but it was the Lakers who got the win after Steph hit a 3 to tie it with 7 seconds left. Austin Reeves hit the game-winning layup with only a second to go. Now, the last game of the night between Denver and Phoenix, it wasn't bad, but it didn't match the early day festivities, with the Suns not letting the Nuggets get closer than 10 after the 7:20 mark of the fourth quarter. If you only watch the Suns on Christmas, you probably think things are going pretty well, but they're not. The Suns have only won 3 of their last 12, including a current 3-game losing streak. This stretch has dragged them down to 15-17, 2 games under 500, and a full game and a half out of the play-in picture. Now, this run is especially concerning because the Suns had a decently healthy run as of late, but that couldn't stop them from losing at home to a Grizzlies team this week that was missing Ja Morant, Zach Edey, Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia, Santi Aldama, Brandon Clark, Vince Williams Jr., and let's just throw in Gigi Jackson wasn't there as well, okay? Now, it should be noted that Bradley Beal did leave this game early with a hip contusion, and Yusuf Nurkic was out because he shoved Najee Marshall's face early in the week, which did lead to a 3-game suspension. But regardless, you have KD and Booker, you're at home, the Grizzlies are beat up. What's wrong with you? And are bigger moves on the horizon if this keeps up? Well, another team on the outside of the play-in that did decide to make a big move this week was the Sacramento Kings, who fired head coach Mike Brown. Brown led the Kings to their first playoff appearance in 16 years, 2 seasons ago. He leaves the Kings with a 107-88 record. Mike Brown was fired by phone on the way to the airport before the Kings' next game, and none of Vivek Ranadive, Monty McNair, or Wes Wilcox have made themselves available for questions regarding that move. All we know is that Kings' former player Doug Christie has taken over as the interim coach. Now, was Mike Brown doomed by clutch play? 2 seasons ago, the Kings were 9-7 in games decided by 3 points or fewer. Last season, they were 6-5 in those games. This season, 2-6, including some absolute heartbreakers in these last few weeks.
Yep.
Now, the Kings have won their last 2 games, including a win over that healthy Sixers team that included a 15-0 run by the Kings to end the game. The Kings are 15-19.
Oh, now, prayers up for Deuce and Mo. Come on.
Prayers up for Deuce and Mo, yes. Now, 2 teams that didn't play on Christmas that do deserve to be mentioned are the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Oklahoma City Thunder, the 2 best teams in the NBA. The Cavs are 29-4, have won 8 in a row. The Thunder are 28-5, and just won a franchise record 13 in a row as of Friday morning. As I mentioned, they are playing the Knicks on Friday night. Now, if you're wondering, when do the Cavs and Thunder play? That's what I want to see. Well, guess what? Next week, Wednesday night, ESPN, Cavs at Thunder. And here's the best part. Both teams will be coming off 2 days rest.
Yeah.
In the history of the NBA, we've only had 30 teams that won at least 28 of their first 33 games, and we got 2 of them this season. The last time 2 teams started off this hot was the 93-94 season with Seattle and Houston.
Wow.
All right, it's been a minute. It's been a minute.
Seattle.
Some quick hitters from this week. We got a trade. The Lakers sent D'Lo, Maxwell Lewis, and 3 seconds to the Nets for Dorian Finney-Smith and Shake Milton. We got 2 scuffles. In addition to Nurkic and Najee Marshall, we had Amen Thompson and Tyler Hero getting into it, with Amen throwing Hero to the ground, which was fun. We had a birthday. LeBron turned 40.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we also had a bad injury. Just 2 games after scoring a 4-point play to beat the Kings, Jaden Ivey suffered a broken fibula in the 4th quarter of the game against Orlando.
Yep.
Finally, we got our first All-Star returns from the fan vote. Leading vote getters in the West were Jokic, KD, LeBron, SGA, and Luka. And in the East, it was Giannis, Tatum, Towns, LaMelo, and Donovan Mitchell. The starters will be announced in only 3 weeks. Those were the top stories this week. Happy New Year to all the slammers and jammers out there.
Happy New Year. And let's go to our BetMGM line of the week, brought to you by BetMGM. Now, the Pacific Division winner right now is just a very interesting topic. You look at it right now, odds of BetMGM, the Clippers, which would have probably been at the bottom of this list at the beginning of the season, are now the favorites to win the Pacific Division at a plus 210. You have the Lakers not too far behind at a plus 250, Warriors at a plus 275, Suns a plus 425, and then you have the Sacramento Kings at plus 2,500. This is a very interesting division. Tons of big names, but boy, I have no clue how to pick this. I still would probably pick the Lakers or Warriors at this point, but I don't know how you're feeling now.
Yeah, I love this division just because they're all kind of ready to make a move. Yeah. They all have available assets, most of them, some of them have available assets to make a move. But like the Clippers are getting Kawhi back. That's a huge thing. What if he stays healthy the second half of the season? They're probably the favorite in this division. The Lakers still have those future firsts they could trade. What if they make a huge move? The Warriors still have all their future picks. They could make a move. The Suns, okay, they don't have anything in the future to trade, but maybe they'll do something to shake up their team. Yeah. And then the Kings, as bad as it is, plus 2,500, they're actually only 4.5 games back, which is a decent amount, but that's not crazy. They still have moves available to them. So yeah, I just think the Pacific Division going forward is going to be really fun. I've been so impressed with the Clippers and how they've weathered this storm without Kawhi Leonard. And if he comes back and if he's just close to what he was last year, I mean, he was really good last year.
He was very good
and played a lot of games. If we get that Kawhi with the way they're playing right now, it's hard not to see how they'd be the favorite, which is what they are right now, plus 210. But, the Lakers are playing well. LeBron had a crazy game against Portland last night at age 40. Yep. So, yeah, I included this as our BetMGM bet of the week just because I love this division and I don't know what's going to happen to all of these teams.
Who's going to hang the banner? They should start doing the ads now. Who's going to hang the Pacific Division banner?
Honestly, you win it this week or you win it this year, I think you deserve to hang the banner.
Hang the banner.
Yes.
hang the divisional banner. Al, let's go to our favorites of the week. Let's start with quotes. Mine came from Anthony Edwards Thursday night. What a dream it must be to cover Anthony Edwards, where you can just pull up to his locker, turn your phone on, video, point it at him, and just let Ant talk. Because he was willing to talk last night after a loss. He was super frustrated with just the simple action of a double team. And he said this, and this comes from friend of the show, Dane Moore. Listen to the Dane Moore podcast, by the way. Great show. And he said, it's not how I want to play, of course. I'm only 23. I don't want to just be I just don't want to be passing the ball all night. But the way they're guarding me, I think I have to. And then one of the reporters, I don't know who it said, they said something like, you're not Mike Conley. And he's like, yeah, I'm not Mike Conley. It's so goofy. Then he said how hard then he was asked how hard it was to stay engaged. And he said, super hard, super hard, super hard, super hard. 4 times he said this because I'm wired to score the ball. And I just think that, the way that we were talking about Ant and the Timberwolves not that long ago, like 8 months ago, was like, oh man, people were making comps from Ant to like MJ. People were saying that like this team could go win a championship. And now it just seems like they are so far from that. I think it's hard to even predict that they'll be a conference finalist again, which is how the season is gone. And so it's just these quotes are just indicative of just more growth, I think, that needs to happen for Ant and for this team. And just that trade just did not work out. It has not worked out so far.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we place a ton of value, and it's not that it's not valuable, but we place a ton of value on flexibility. But when it comes to disrupting the roster this much, a roster that had great chemistry, that had played really well together, that had just beaten the Nuggets and had almost gone to the NBA Finals, to be that disruptive to your roster, I think is something that you just have to be so careful with. And so these quotes to me are just indicative of just like more growing pains that are to come for the Wolves.
Yeah, and part of this is normal. Like part of this should be expected because Ant is a great player and he should be expected to get doubled like this. And part of him making that next step is learning how to deal with this. But part of this is also a factor of their roster where a lot of times when he's out there, why would teams care about anyone else on the court? Why wouldn't you double Ant on every single possession? And so, yes, they're going to have to figure that out. Dante DiVincenzo playing a little bit better as of late. That helps. But I don't see like the clear answer on their roster as currently constructed to really take that pressure off of him. My favorite quote of this week, Michael Malone, he was asked about Mike Brown's firing from Sacramento. Said, quote, "No class, no balls," referring to the Sacramento Kings management. Very quote. Direct. And I think very appropriate. The fact that it just like immediately leaked how they had fired him. This is such an easy thing to handle. Like they're around this guy all the time. And they can't just meet him in person and say this. Did they really like come up with this plan right after practice? He was in practice. You let him run a practice and then fired him by phone immediately after on the way to the plane to go to the next game. These are like very simple things. Like you just have to stop for like 5 minutes and think about, okay, what's a good way to do this? This is a very big decision we're making. And then to not come out and have a press conference about firing a coach like Mike Brown, who, like I mentioned, he's going to be very significant in the history of the Sacramento Kings because of the season they had 2 seasons ago. Yeah. Like he is always going to be remembered. So this is a bigger deal than just some random team firing some random coach that was off to a rough start, So, and this isn't anything to do about like whether Mike Brown should have been kept or not. There's arguments against it because a lot of people see the changes with the roster and felt like that Mike Brown wasn't making the necessary adjustments to really incorporate DeMar DeRozan. That's fine, whatever. This is more just about like how you treat human beings. And so Michael Malone coming out and saying no class, no balls, very direct, very simple, and very accurate. And it's very annoying because it felt these last couple seasons like the Kings had finally made this turn towards just being a normal NBA franchise. And Mike Brown was a big part of that. And so to send that guy away and at the same moment kind of bring back all of these terrible Kang's memories that we had for the previous decade and a half, it was just really disappointing.
Yeah. And it's an indictment on leadership, honestly, because it shows like no connectedness between ownership, front office, coaching staff. I don't think there's a connectedness there. I think that there is poor leadership, and poor leadership at the top always trickles down, and somebody's going to pay for it at all times, whether it be the roster, the team, the coaching staff, whoever it is. Someone, when things don't go well, someone is going to pay for poor leadership. And that's what's happened in Sacramento for a long time. And it's just rearing its ugly head again.
So next up, Andrew, is our favorite stat of this week. And I wanted to find a stat to honor the Cleveland Cavaliers, who, along with OKC, are entering rarefied air with their start to the season. The Cavs are 29-4.
Yeah.
By the way, I mentioned earlier, there's only 30 teams that have started off winning 28 of their first 33 games. So of those 28 teams, 13 have gone on to win the NBA championship. If you're a Cavs fan out there and interested. One of them made the finals but did not win. We all know who that was, 73-win Warriors. Another 10 made it to the conference finals. So 23 of those 20, I guess it's 24 of those 28 teams made it as far as the conference finals, which is very exciting for both those fan bases. On Cleaning the Glass, you can break down offensive efficiency into half-court offense and transition offense. And as a reminder, Cleaning the Glass cuts out garbage time, so these stats will be different on other sites. But something unique about the Cavs this season is that they are both the number one half-court offense and the number one transition offense when ranked by points per play. And this is significant for a few reasons. First, their 107.6 offensive rating in the half court makes them the most efficient half court offense in NBA history. And I know what you're thinking. We're in this era of crazy offense, and that's true. But let's just compare them to last year's Boston team, who played in a very similar league, a league that actually had a higher average offensive efficiency. It actually dipped a little bit this year. The Cavs' half-court offense is a full point per 100 possessions better than that Celtics team, who put together one of the better starting fives in recent memory. What the Cavs are doing in the half-court is really special, even when taking into account the era that they're playing in. And the other thing that's cool is that being first in both half-court and transition offense just doesn't really happen. The Cleaning the Glass database goes back to the 03-04 season. Through all those seasons, all the great Warriors teams, the big three Heat offenses, the Nash Suns offenses, only one team has ever managed to finish a season first in both half-court and transition offense. And you probably won't guess it. Now, Andrew, have you already looked at this? Do you know who it is?
I have no clue who it is.
Would you like to make a guess for fun?
So like the Heat or the
I just said it wasn't the Heat.
Well, I mean, I don't know. That's like when I think of like teams that it could be, I think you named all the teams that I thought that it could be. Like
and a lot of those teams
or the Heat or whoever. Yeah.
Yeah. The one team I didn't mention, which should be mentioned also, is like the Harden Rockets, because they definitely got close a few seasons.
Yeah.
It was the 2011-2012 San Antonio Spurs. So this was Kawhi's rookie season. It was the lockout year. They were the number one seed in the West. They got up 2-0 on the KD Russ Harden Thunder in the Western Conference Finals before losing 4 straight. That's the only team that's ever done what the Cavs are doing right now.
Wow.
This is a very special offense. And so I think we should all be very excited to see the number one offense go up against the number one defense next Wednesday night on 2 days rest. I feel like I'm hyping this up so much. Inevitably, someone's going to be held out of that game for some stupid reason.
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell's going to need rest or something.
Yeah, he'll be, like somebody will have a random illness and will be held out. Yeah. But right now, it looks like the perfect setup.
I was going to say the good news is that even if that one doesn't work out, they play again the following Thursday.
That's true. We'll get 2 in a row. One of them's got to be good.
One of them's got to be good. I mean, come on. Be good. My stat of the week is there's one team in the NBA, Alex, that is top 5 in both offensive and defensive rating. Do you know who it is?
Is it the Grizzlies?
It's the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, I knew that.
You know, tons of talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics and the Thunder and even the Knicks, who are having a really nice season. But the Grizzlies, have somehow, and it is like cobbled together, a team that is just really successful, and they're finding it on both ends. You know, they currently rank 4th in defensive efficiency at a 108.3, and then offensive efficiency, they're 5th at a 116.6. I mean, they have the 5th best net rating. They're just right behind New York at 8.2. And there's a clear drop off that happens with this top 5. The top 5 is the Thunder at a plus 12.2, well ahead of everybody. Cleveland, 11.6, Boston, 10, New York, 8.4, and then the Grizzlies, 8.2. I just think that they're being underrated and not really thought of as like a quote unquote top 5 team in the NBA. But by these efficiency stats, like they have been. And so I just think that is interesting to note. Even though they have had a ton of injuries, they've had to play with a ton of different lineups. You know, Ja's been in and out, Bane has been in and out, but they're still finding consistency too. And with players that, you know, a lot of people didn't think were going to be contributing, you know, on a night-to-night basis for them. So just a tip of the cap to the Memphis Grizzlies, who have had a really, really nice season so far.
And if they are being underrated, it's probably likely due to those injuries. Because like when that skeleton Grizzlies team beats the Suns, like what does that really mean in relation to the championship? You know, like we want to see this fully healthy Memphis team, because the fully healthy Memphis team is the one that's going to have a chance to win a championship. You know, so I just want to see this team healthy for like a month during a tough part of their schedule with all their guys, and let's see how good they can be. They've obviously been incredible with all these guys out of the lineup, but we saw this a few years ago when it was the same deal. You know, Ja was out and they were so good with Tyus Jones. And ultimately when it comes to the playoffs, like like how you do when all of your guys are out doesn't mean that much. Like we want to see how everyone does when they're fully healthy. And I think they'd be very good, obviously, but I just want to see it.
I think it also though is about the connect, and just like the opposite of what we were talking about with the Kings is like, there is a connectedness that exists within this front office. You know, Taylor Jenkins has been with the team since the 1920 season, and they've had success and they've had failure throughout that, but they continue to stick with him. And you look at it this year and like, what are the things that keep teams like this winning? A lot of times it's the coaching staff, like having a connectedness with the team and getting them to work hard and getting them to all play on a string. And they're doing that. And so to me, like it's a really good thing for like Grizzlies fans, obviously, but just for like the health of the team in the front office. You know, the opposite is happening in New Orleans, where they've had similar issues with guys being in and out, but they've won 5 games. They've won 5 games, and their roster is not a 5-win roster. And it hasn't been all season. Like they should win more than that. And it shows that there's a disconnect somewhere that is clearly not happening in Memphis.
And for the Grizzlies to do this the year after they had this season from hell. I mean, when you have one of those seasons, you kind of just think in your head, okay, well, next year is going to be great. Everything will work out perfect. And yet they still are hitting all of these like injury issues, similar to last season, obviously not as dramatic as last season, and yet still playing so good night after night, regardless of who's on the court. Which, by the way, Andrew, they're playing the Kings tonight on Friday night. Hey now. So our next one, our favorite player of the week, and my favorite player this week was Cam Johnson of the Brooklyn Nets. Outside of a 9-point stinker against Orlando, and honestly, who hasn't had a stinker against the Magic?
Who hasn't had a 9-point stinker against Orlando? Come on.
Cam scored 24 against Toronto, but then he scored 29 and 26 in 2 games against the Bucks, which were Nets wins. Now, we've all talked about the idea of a team showcasing a player that they intend to trade. What Cam Johnson is doing this season is one of the greatest showcases of all time. He's averaging career highs in points per game, 3-point attempts per game, 3-point percentage. But here's the crazy one. Cam Johnson had played 317 games in the NBA before this season, regular season and playoffs. 317 games coming into this year. He took 6 or more free throws in 11 of those games. Okay. 11 of the 317. Through 31 games this season, he's taken 6 or more free throws in 10 games. 10 of the 31 games.
That's crazy.
Who is this guy? And of course, he's shooting a career high from the line as well. When you consider that he's under contract for $20 million next season, $22.5 million the season after, I don't know how easy this trade is going to be because the Nets deserve an overpay. Honestly, the only downside for the Nets waiting for this desperate offer, which I feel like is coming, is that he's playing so well, they're probably winning too many games, especially now after trading for D'Angelo Russell, who's perfectly competent as a starting point guard. You don't go to all that trouble of trading for your own picks to be the 7th worst team in the league, and yet that's where they are, and they're already 5 games ahead of Toronto for the 5th spot in the reverse standings. But you know what? Maybe none of it matters because someone's going to give the Nets an absolute haul to get Cam Johnson, who is playing the best basketball of his career.
Yeah, that's the thing is that you just hold out and you're like, all right, you just wait till the trade deadline because if like somebody is going to give you like 3 picks somewhere, you know?
Yeah.
It'll happen and it'll probably be an overpay for him. I also think there's something going on in Brooklyn where it's a little bit reminiscent of the Thunder years ago where guys were just outperforming who they were. And I think that a lot of guys in Brooklyn are just being set up really well to be successful. And the vibes are very good there. And so I think Cam Johnson's a very good player. I think that I'd be careful if you're expecting this kind of production from him on any other team. That's all I would have to say. I think Cam's a very good player. I think that whoever gets him is going to be happy with him, but like this is a lot to expect. Al, my player of the week is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is now, according to our betting partners, BetMGM, the favorite to win the regular season MVP at a -110. Jokic is at a +110, and then you have Giannis at a +1,000. And a lot of that has been this win streak that you mentioned earlier. The Thunder have won 13 games in a row. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Don't worry about that loss that's in there. Shai has been unbelievable. In this 13 games win streak, he's led the league in scoring. You look at his box scores from these last several games. I mean, he had 40 against the Minnesota Timberwolves. He had 29 in 30 minutes against the Clippers. He had 35 against Memphis. He didn't have to play much against Charlotte, only scored 22, but had 45 in a very impressive game against Indiana. Indiana had it going that night, and Shai absolutely just shut off their water defensively, and then on offense, he was amazing, scoring 45 points. And it's just funny to look back at like the journey that Shai has gone through to become the player that he is. I mean, you think about the trade that happened where the Thunder traded Paul George to the Clippers. The first tweet that Woj sent out was Oklahoma City is trading all-star Paul George to the Los Angeles Clippers for a record-setting collection of draft choices. League sources tell ESPN. That was the first tweet about that trade. No mention of SGA. Like not even a mention of the guy. And he was a late lottery pick. He's obviously a good player. He went to Kentucky. It's not like he's like some like low-level guy. But he didn't even start for Kentucky though. And he was a lottery pick, but he wasn't even mentioned as like the star return. It was these picks and like the number of picks that they were getting back. But Shai is developed into just a ridiculous player. Like I remember covering him and thinking when he was scoring 25 points per game in the 21-22 season, like, wow, this is a very good player. This is a starting level 2 guard. And the fact that he took it up a level from there, like he has gotten better every single year that he's been in the NBA. And like there's stats to prove it. You can look on the court and see that he has new and different moves, the stop and start stuff from him. And in one move that he showed against Naz Reid specifically, where I think he stopped and started like 5 times when Naz was like playing perfect defense on him. And there was literally nothing that Naz could have done better, except SGA is just a better player. I think that at this point, he's deserving of the MVP. I think that you look ahead at this schedule the Thunder have over the course of really the entire month of January. If the Thunder can maintain not the winning streak, but if they can be, I don't know, above 500 or better over the course of this these games, I think that SGA will win the MVP. I think like this is his chance. He's going to be on national television a couple times. They even flexed that Cavs Thunder game into national TV, which obviously they should do that. But getting to play on that stage, I think will be very important for Shai in particular. And he's just been great over the last week. So my player of the week, SGA.
Yeah, the upcoming schedule is going to be really fun because if there are doubters out there, like this is a great opportunity for Shai because you're getting to play the Knicks, Boston, Cleveland, and the Knicks again, all in a row. 2 at home, 2 on the road. That's about as tough of a test as you can get. I mean, those are the clear 3 best teams in the Eastern Conference. If they did make it to the finals, it'd likely be against one of those teams. So these are going to be really fun tests for both Shai and this Oklahoma City Thunder team to see just how good they are because they've had a really nice run. They've had wins that have been impressive. You mentioned the Indiana win. I thought the Minnesota win, but like that Memphis game, like Memphis was beat up like they've been. So we didn't get to see that like measuring stick game that we were excited to see because Memphis was without their guys. So yeah, they blew them out, but like ultimately who cares? Like I want to see them against a healthy Memphis team. This is like the real test though. Like all these next 4 games are going to be tougher than any of the games that they played in that 13 win streak. So yeah, it'll be really fun to see just exactly where this OKC team is.
Yep. Al, you want to go to our moments of the week this week?
Yes, Andrew. Now, there was a moment in the first quarter of a Heat Pelicans game this week where Jimmy Butler got past the ball in the corner and he took what I would describe as the most casual 3-pointer ever. It was like, it looked like a slow-mo Dirk shot, only if you didn't fade away. Just one leg up, just kind of throwing it up, faced up. It looked like the kind of shots guys take when the refs call a foul, the game stops, and you just kind of throw something up for fun. It's not that serious. The Pelicans announcers compared it to a shot you'd take during horse. Now, a lot happened this week in the Jimmy Butler saga. We had the Christmas Day report from Shams that Jimmy prefers a trade out of Miami. Then Pat Riley issued a statement addressing the rumors, saying that Heat are not trading Jimmy. You had Jimmy saying he wants to get his joy back from playing basketball and probably couldn't do that if he was staying in Miami. And then on Thursday, a new Shams report that confirmed an official trade request from Butler to the Heat with the added detail that he is willing to play, quote, anywhere other than Miami. You remember a few weeks ago, it was like, no, just these 3 teams or just these 4 teams. Now it is anywhere, literally anywhere outside of Miami. And in light of all that, watching this goofy ass 3-pointer he took is really funny. And Andrew, we might get more of these goofy 3-pointers because as Bobby Marks pointed out, if Miami just lets him opt out and walk this summer, they would have a ton of flexibility, including being $47 million below the tax. They'd have $50 million plus in expiring contracts. They'd have access to the non-tax mid-level exception, ability to take back more salary in a trade. Unless they're getting real assets, is it really in Miami's best interest to take back matching salary just to move him? You know what? I say just keep him until the summer. And in the meantime, let's see if this shot was a one-off or if he's about to embark on a wildly entertaining sabotage campaign.
Yeah. I have 3 destinations that I like for him that I'll give to you real quick.
Now that he's expanded?
Yeah, now that he's expanded. I still think the Grizzlies are a fun option for him. And I know that like any place you trade him, the biggest problem is the extension and like, what do you do? But I just feel like if the Grizzlies had Jimmy Butler, I just would fear them so much more in the West. Like, I think that people would take them much more seriously. And I know, like I just mentioned, they have a top 5 offense, top 5 defense. But if they were throwing out Ja, Jimmy, Bane, and Triple J, like that's a serious 4 guys that I think that you would really fear in the playoffs. So, like, you could cobble enough salary together, Marcus Smart, Brandon Clark, Luke Kennard, and a first for Jimmy. I don't know what you think about that.
I'm just thinking about the shooting in that starting lineup. If you put Jimmy in there as well.
Yeah, but it's not like you're taking off that much shoot. You're not taking that much shooting off the table. It's really just Luke Kennard.
True. Yeah. Like I said, it's one of those ideas that is fun for 6 months, and then you get to this summer, and you're like, okay, well, are we actually committing to this? Do we really want to sign, 30 whatever year old Jimmy Butler to a longer term contract.
I get it.
That just doesn't feel like a move that the Grizzlies would ever make. That does not.
I know.
Does that feel like, I understand that Jimmy Butler feels like a Grizzlies player, like historically.
He does.
He fits in with that.
He feels like a
ethos.
Zebo guy,
Yeah, but he's going to cost like 5 times what Zebo cost.
They basically were given Zebo.
Yeah. So
yeah, I get that. I get it. I just love the fit. I just think it would be outrageously fun. And the fan base would immediately take to this guy. Like he's a Grizzly at heart. Okay. My second destination. I just think this team needs some kind of attitude shakeup, and either Jimmy is going to be the worst or the best thing for you. And I just think the Indiana Pacers need a shakeup. I really don't have a good trade to Indiana, but I just think they need some toughness. I think they need some mental toughness, and you could cobble enough salary together. You'd have to probably include Miles Turner in this, Obi Toppin, Aaron Nesmith. I don't know. I don't know what the trade is. I just like the idea of Jimmy staying in the East. I like that a lot better. And then Jimmy going to a team like the Pacers, who yes, they made the conference finals last year. I don't think anybody thinks of them as a serious conference finalist this year. And they need just another piece. And they have already committed to this roster, with what they have given to Siakam and to Halliburton. And so I just think that they need some kind of all-in move to get them to the next level, in my opinion. And I don't know if they have the goods to get him, but I just like the idea of Jimmy in Indiana. I just like that. I don't
disagree with the idea that they definitely they're a one trade away from kind of getting back into this contender conversation. But that almost feels like too all in. I mean, that is $150 million for 3 players with Halliburton, Siakam, and Butler. Even if you can cobble together the pieces, that the resulting team would be so thin. And it's not like Jimmy Butler has been some Iron Man in the regular seasons. So I would not want to do that. That is too much of an all-in move.
Is it too much of an all-in move for the Nuggets to try to get in on Jimmy?
The Nuggets. So would that be MPJ?
It'd have to be MPJ and other salaries.
I'm just thinking, okay. I mentioned how the shooting maybe would be a concern with the Grizzlies. The shooting would be a massive concern with the Nuggets. I don't think you can do that.
You don't like Jimmy and Westbrook on the court together?
I don't, surprisingly. They would be a fun little pair. I think they'd have some great post-game interactions together.
They would.
But yet Jimmy's lack of shooting, it really makes it hard for some teams to fit in. Because Denver is one of those teams where they just can't afford. They can't afford to lose MPJ shooting and replace it with nothing, essentially. I mean, Jimmy Butler's taken, I think, 31 threes.
I know. He won't take them.
And one of them was that one I described earlier.
I know.
Which wasn't even a real shot.
I was going to say he's taking 30, really. Yeah, I get it. The Nuggets, I think, are just in a weird place. And this would probably, this is either this works or if it doesn't, then this could be a spectacular failure if something like that happened. But I just feel like they are in, and we talked to Adam Mares about it, they need a shakeup. I don't know that Jimmy is the right guy, but I think that he would bring the kind of attitude that they would need. And I think Jokic would probably love playing with Jimmy. If this was their playoff team, I think I would much more fear a Jimmy Butler, Jokic, Jamal Murray team than I would one with MPJ. That's all I'm saying. I mean, I just don't fear MPJ in the playoffs, and I think Jimmy has proven himself as a playoff performer throughout the years.
Oh yeah, for sure, definitely. I'm looking at other teams. I mean, it is tough to come up with one, and the other angle to this is Miami. I mentioned all these benefits they would get if Jimmy just walked. They would get to completely reshape their team.
Yeah,
and so
they would.
Do you like the idea of that flexibility more than potentially taking on that big MPJ contract and maybe one first? I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know what choices they're going to have, but I would probably choose flexibility. If I have a team in Miami, give me flexibility. over,
especially unless the asset coming back is like a real primo asset.
Yeah,
like
which I don't think you can get for Jimmy at this point. Like I don't think you're getting that. I just don't think that's happening. I think that his contract and the idea that you're going to have to re-sign him on a number that you're probably not going to like it makes it unattractive enough for teams. And so I don't think he's going to get a primo asset back. Yeah.
And the other thing they got to think about is their future picks as well, because
they do.
They have a potential unprotected pick going to OKC next year if they miss this year's playoffs. Otherwise, OKC will just get their pick this season. And then they also have that outstanding pick from the Terry Rozier trade, which is, again, lottery protected in 27, then becomes unprotected in 28. So they don't have a lot of their own flexibility right now. Adding on to just looking at their pick assets, and then you factor in the cap situation, especially if they decide to bring Jimmy back, like they would be really locked up. So that flexibility is looking more and more enticing.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. The only other thing I wanted to touch on here was just like the fall off from Tyrese Halliburton and like how it showed in the All-Star voting. You know, the first returns for All-Star voting last year, that Tyrese Halliburton had 1.3 million votes in the first return. And he's not even in the top 10 this year for guards. I mean, if he got that 1.3, he would lead all guards in All-Star voting this year. Like, it's crazy how it's obviously shown on the court, and he's been better lately. I'll give him that credit, but like it has been a strange fall off for Tyrese Halliburton, and the fans have noticed. And go from 1.3 million votes all the way down to out of the top 10, which would be under probably 100,000, is pretty wild. So I just thought that was an interesting note from the All-Star, just from the All-Star voting. Another interesting note, we're talking about the Hornets right after this quick break.
All right, Andrew, it is time for the Wheel of Fandom, the weekly segment where we spin a wheel, it lands on a team, and we become fans of that team for the next week. 2 weeks ago, the wheel landed on the Charlotte Hornets and crushed them under its weight. They went 0-5 over the last 2 weeks, part of an 8-game losing streak that is still ongoing if you want to check in. The Hornets won 1 game in the month of December. They've lost 16 of their last 17. They are 7-25, 13th in the East. According to Cleaning the Glass, the Hornets have the 28th ranked offense and the 20th ranked defense. Andrew, if our favorite team this week is the Hornets, who is our guest?
It's Brian Geisinger, host of the Buzz Beat podcast. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Looking forward to talking about the Charlotte Hornets, who are definitely an NBA basketball team. I can say that with confidence.
They are in the NBA. They made it.
They're there.
So Brian, the main complaint with this franchise in the past is that they were always gunning for the 8th seed with no real ambition. Now Charlotte has a new owner, new GM, new coach. What is your read on the mood of the fan base right now? They're 7-25, which isn't great, but there does seem to be an approach that feels different enough that fans, are they like buying into this? Do they think this long-term plan is something that will actually work?
I think there's a split, honestly, because in part because a lot of fans are restless. I mean, they haven't made the playoffs since 2016. I mean, it's been a long time here.
Yeah.
You're thinking, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is still in high school, the last time the Hornets made the playoffs. So I think there's some restlessness because of that. I think there's also another portion of within that group that sort of expected them to, maybe overachieve a little bit either last season or this season, in part because of having a talent like LaMelo Ball just going to sort of naturally raise some of the expectations. But I think a lot of people fall into this sort of category that I do, which is that there seems to finally be like a direction and a plan. I mean, for so long they were pretty rudderless, and just hopelessly chasing the 8th seed. If they would rebuild, it was never a full teardown. They'd maybe tank half a season or something like that and still end up with a mostly blah pick. I mean, so many draft picks from 11 to 19, over the last decade or so, if not longer. So I think given how poorly they have performed last month, I think there is some frustration, but for the most part, those of whom came into the season, I think, with sort of like more reasoned and realistic expectations, they're just happy to see the team, like the last, 13 months, 15 months, do things that make sense for a rebuilding team in a smaller market, right? So making trades at the deadline last season. I guess if you like the Tijan Salon pick from the draft this past year, but just doing things that put them on a track to potentially in a couple of years from now, maybe be a team that is sort of like reliably in the playoffs and has a sustainable roster. It's just it's kind of far from here and sort of hard to see right now.
So this team did look pretty competent. I mean, they were pretty competitive at the beginning of the season. They started 6-9 before this current 1-16 stretch. And looking at the game logs, it's hard to not notice that this current slide kind of coincided with Grant Williams tearing his ACL. How important was his loss, and what are some of the other factors that have contributed to this slide?
Yeah, the Grant loss was huge, and it overlapped with other injuries, which hasn't helped. LaMelo has missed a fair amount of time recently. Brandon Miller's missed some time. Even guys like Cody Martin, who had played in every game up until recently, has missed some time. So, but the Grant injury was big because they just don't. He has a skill set that is tough to find, right? I mean, like a legitimate, solid player on both sides of the court, can guard different positions. So he gives you some lineup versatility on that side of the court. He gives you some scheme versatility, including fitting into some of the new stuff that Charles Lee was doing on that side of the court, including cross-matching at the 4 and 5 with some matchups this year. And he's the one guy in the front court that could, had the combination of being able to shoot, pass, and set good screens. They just don't have anyone else like that, in the 4 and 5 room. And so you knew, I don't know, maybe if I knew it was going to be quite this bad, but we did a pod, the day after Grant's injury or the day of Grant's injury, and just said they're in serious trouble. And at that time, Mark Williams and Nick Richards were not even back in the lineup, so it looked especially dark thin, just given what Grant also contributes as a small ball center. I mean, the Hornets have one lineup this season that's played over 100 possessions together, according to Cleaning the Glass. That is the lineup with, LaMelo, Miller, Green, Bridges, and Grant as the small ball 5. So he was a serious player for them, and I do think it's important to note. We saw this maybe a little bit more late last season. But when you think about a front court, maybe I would stop short of calling Grant a front court hub, but certainly a guy that you can throw the ball to at the elbow, you can run handoffs, you can run split cuts off of that. It was really helpful for a guy like Brandon Miller, who's a guy who's a very good off-ball player, and sort of a natural fit next to a 4 or a 5 that can pass and set good screens like that. So I think Brandon has missed that as well, even when he's been healthy and in the lineup. And just, again, what Grant does, it's kind of funny when you see he's 6'5", 6'6", and I think people think of Grant as a guy that would switch around a lot, but Charles Lee was using him in drop coverage and stuff this season too, which is a little funny when you see a guy that height playing the drop. But yeah, Grant can get the job done in a bunch of different ways, and you just knew they weren't going to be able to replicate it. He's a guy that really the one dude on the team that has proven, postseason experience, and that speaks to sort of his playability and viability in leverage minutes and crunch time. And now, you're relying on, a Miles Bridges type. They're actually using Mark Williams more as a passer in the front court, but there's really no one like Grant to sort of bring that skill set to the lineup. And honestly, my guess would be that outside of LaMelo and Brandon Miller, maybe Trey Mann too, just given his shot creation abilities, Grant's probably the 3rd or 4th most important guy, hardest to replace guy, I would say, probably on the lineup. So, and he's going to be out. It's a really gnarly injury with the ACL, and you just hope it's going to be a smooth and healthy recovery. But he's going to be gone for a while, and there's no real way to bring that to replicate that, because Bridges doesn't give you the defense. And so, Tajon Salon's just not there from like a viability standpoint.
Yeah, Grant is such a good example of like when people talking about rebuilding teams and just needing a veteran to make everything work, like to help other guys develop. I remember, me and Andrew are OKC fans, but like Mike Muscala back in the day, like not some amazing player or anything, but just having a shooter on the floor who was a veteran and consistent made it so much easier for everyone else on the court. And it sounds like Grant Williams was kind of filling that role where he could just do things that other guys just can't do. And when you take him out, people are put in positions that they're just not ready for, probably.
Yeah, and the one guy that could really run like pick and pop with LaMelo too. None of the centers are stretch options. And again, some of the fours can give you some of that, but Bridges is well under 30% on threes this year. Salon's, a pretty bad shooter right now. So even if you want to kind of get those pop actions, you need it to be guard in, obviously every team in the league's doing, all those little ghost screens and stuff now, but it's just not the same. In part, too, because Grant set really good screens, then would pop hard or make plays on the short roll. Yeah, there's just no one that they have that can really, replicate that. It was a serious loss on both sides of the court. And yeah, like looking at this, there's 312 minutes this season without LaMelo, Brandon Miller, and Grant on the court. The Hornets have a 100 offensive rating in that, which is terrible. With those three guys on the court, the Hornets just short of 122 points per 100 possessions with Grant, LaMelo, and Miller on the court. I mean, it's not small. It's a rather small sample.
Yeah.
But it does speak to when they had their two best playmakers and shot creators with their sort of like best front court hub. It was producing an offense that was actually scoring at a pretty high clip.
Well, I would love to keep this Grant Williams love fest going. Let's talk about LaMelo Ball. Okay, LaMelo is actually leading all East guards in All-Star votes, which was, I think, a surprise when people saw that graphic made by the NBA. He's averaging 30 points per game this season with a 39.1% usage rate. His usage has been steadily increasing every season, but this is the highest usage rate since like peak Harden and Westbrook, which just like seems unfathomable to me. We're getting more LaMelo than we've ever gotten. Do you think that this is a function of the roster, or is this like the future of what LaMelo Ball will look like with this team?
I think or hope it's a function of the roster. I mean, he's obviously going to always be like, because you were just talking about the usage rate. I think he's hovering around 40% assist rate right now too. I mean, the usage and playmaking load he's shouldering is pretty ridiculous. He's very good. He's very fun. And he can do a lot of, special stuff on the court, but I think the two guys you just named, whether it's Harden or Westbrook or Kobe, those guys are, tanks and guys that are really, conditioned, or Luka. You think of the guys that like really do play pure Helio ball. Like that's not LaMelo. And I'm probably one of like 12 like people that either cover the Hornets or are fans of the Hornets that still really reflect fondly on what sort of the playmaking apparatus looked like for Charlotte his rookie season. And that's when they still had Malik Monk. Gordon Hayward was healthy and good for most of that season. Miles Bridges was coming online as a playmaker. They still had Terry Rozier, Devontae Graham, and basically they had like 6-7 guys that could like run, credibly run pick and roll or could bend a defense with a live dribble. And I don't think they're ever going to get back quite to that sort of mix, with a teenage LaMelo. But I would love for him to be a guy that wasn't having to isolate so much, wasn't having to run so much pick and roll. All of those sort of like possession numbers are kind of like way off the charts for him this season. He's not, a very efficient isolation scorer. It really is just him either trying to throw himself into guys and draw a foul or taking tough threes from above the break and off the dribble. So I think it's because Miller missed time. Really, when Trey Mann went down too, that was such a big loss. I mean, he's only played, I think, 12 or 13 games now for Charlotte. He was having an awesome season. I feel really bad for Trey, who was finally like getting some shine. And without those guys, I mean, it really is on LaMelo to be to create so much. And with him out, I mean, you should see if you've been watching the Hornets, like some of the offensive lineups they're having to throw out there with, Nick Smith Jr., KJ Simpson. They're like really strapped for like on ball creation. So, and as good as Brandon Miller is, like, he's not the kind of guy that can just totally like break down a defense, like he's sort of still better and off down screens and handoffs. So my hope would be that like there's another lottery pick coming to them in 5-6 months, and that's someone who could give them some on ball juice. Again, LaMelo's always, you're gonna want the ball in his hands a ton, but it needs to be dialed back. And honestly, I think you would get a more efficient version of him because he's an excellent spot up shooter. Several seasons in his career, above 40% on catch and shoot threes. And he's an excellent, catch and go passer. And he doesn't really get to do all that much anymore because so often the possession is just LaMelo pick and roll and, playing out of that. It would be nice to see him be able to kind of play off advantage some, as opposed to having be the guy that's always responsible for drumming it up.
You mentioned Brandon Miller. So his efficiency stats are down from his rookie season, but overall stats are up across the board. Points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, 3-pointers per game, all higher than last season. And part of that is just increased usage, but are there any areas of his game where you feel like he's obviously gotten better from his rookie season?
Yeah, I guess. I think there's two I would highlight. The shot diet. He's taking less mid-range shots, which... He's making a much lower percentage of them too. He's a very good pull-up mid-range shooter last season, and I think Charles Lee showed up and said, "We're knocking those down. We're knocking that. We're redirecting that shot diet." He's taking he's averaging I think over 11 threes per game this season, and I think 56% of his field goal attempts from beyond the arc. So it's a lot. So in a way, I think that's good, but I think some of that is a reliance of his inability to kind of like get into the paint, and really be a guy that can like play and finish through contact, which was something that if you scouted him pre-draft, like that was, that was going to be part of the hang up with him too. I think the passing has shown up a little bit more, and he's always been like a pretty good connector in transition, but you're seeing him, if he's able to get two guys on the ball, whether he's curling off of a down screen or running in, empty side pick and roll, he's got the height to pass over the top and find the roller. Or if it's another empty side look, he's, I think, showing a little bit more confidence with some of those pocket passes, hitting guys in space. And it's important to remember too that like the context around him this year, like really isn't that good. This is a bad offensive team. There's not a lot of like secondary creation and shot making. So when he's out there and if LaMelo's not playing, then, he goes to the top of the scouting report, and that's tough for a guy who's like really reliant, on jumpers to kind of like get it going. But I think the passing has made a leap. And then you talked about their record. They're 1-16 in their last 17 games, I think. Mm-hmm. That one win came against the Indiana Pacers, where, TJ McConnell almost beat them single-handedly in that game, but Miller made some big plays the final like 2 to 3 minutes of that game, and sort of on a few possessions in the first half too, where Charlotte put the ball in his hands or used him as a screener and basically played matchup ball with him to go at Tyrese Halliburton. And he was very successful against it. I know Halliburton's not a good defender. The Pacers, not a good defensive team. That was interesting to me. Because that I don't project Miller to be sort of like that kind of ball handler. Like I like him a lot as a player and a scorer. I think of him sort of more as like a guy that you want to use off of movement and flow him into stuff, as opposed to just having him, go, put a target on someone's back and have Miller go after them one-on-one or in a switch or attack, the hedge and recover. But that was interesting to me because it showed that he's at least a little capable of doing it. And again, it's the one win that they've had since I think November 21st. So like it still sticks out, So I thought that was a little intriguing. But yeah, if I had to pick one thing for Miller, I would say it's just sort of like the steady growth as a playmaker, along with the sort of the shot diet. I guess getting to statistically a better place, at least sort of like from a jump shot perspective, but still feels like there's some work to go there as well.
The Hornets used the 6th pick in the draft to take Tijan Saloon. How are you saying it? Tell me your pronunciation.
I say Salon. Yeah, Salon. But I've heard Saloon too. So, but I go Salon.
Okay, Salon. Okay. He was one of the youngest prospects in the draft. He's been getting pretty consistent minutes in the rotation, averaging about 20 minutes per game. The numbers have not been great, which isn't a huge surprise, but what have you seen that gets you excited about his future?
Yeah, I really thought heading into the season, in part because Salon had he was pretty rough in summer league. If you caught him out there, like it was not great. And obviously he's really young, but he played in a good professional league last season at Colette in France. I kind of thought he would spend a lot of the season in the G League, to be frank. Like, I thought he would be in Greensboro playing with the Swarm most of the season, but Bridges missed time at the start of the year, and then Grant's missed time, and now he's just out for the year. So, like, they've needed guys that can just play at the 4 or, at the 5 or whatever. So he's sort of been forced into a role that it's not super fair for him. I would honestly say, like, the context is, like, almost as bad as it could probably be for a 19-year-old, coming into a team like this that's not very good and is really struggles offensively. What I like from him are his aggressiveness and his anticipation skills when he's guarding passing lanes defensively. I think he can be disruptive like that. I like his length. I think he's potentially, if you could ever get to the idealized version of him, he's a guy that can give you some weak side rim protection. You could cross match with him too. Again, Charles Lee's been using the 4 to guard like opposing stretch 5s a lot this season, and then having the 5, which is Mark Williams right now, kind of playing that Rob Williams roving defensive role on the backside. So Salon's a guy with his length and his size might be able to sort of unlock some stuff for you there. I think the big thing for him though is stating the obvious, is the shot, the 3-pointer, the catch and shoot, the slight movement threes. Because ultimately that's what's going to make him like viable or not. Like, it's cool that he can cut around. He'll try to get on the offensive glass. The Hornets have been a very good offensive rebounding team this season, and he's helped there in some regard. But like the archetype for him is like, tall shooter and guy that shoots pick and pops and relocations and flare screens, like that kind of stuff that helps, would in theory help open up the floor for LaMelo and Brandon Miller. He takes deep threes. Sometimes he takes really tough threes, and that's in part why the shooting numbers look so rough right now. So that's going to be the thing. Like, can he ever get to become a mid to high 30s guy on volume? Because that can open up the catch and go for him, and he's got some, live ball dribble ability, but it's pretty rough, and I think it's going to take some time. I mean, again, when they picked him, I thought this was going to be I thought he would spend the vast majority of the season with Greensboro and in the G League, and it would be a 2-3 year process for this guy to sort of like be brought online, and he had to kind of get just thrown into the deep end here. So not entirely fair. And then the last thing I would say for him too is, like, I like some of the defensive upside, but he's gonna have to get he's just gonna have to get better laterally. Like, you see guys beat him off the dribble with the first dribble all the time. He's got like Obi Toppin hips, guarding the ball in space. Like, guys can just jab step and, rocket right by him. And he's too long and athletic, I think, to sort of like be that much of a liability in space and getting over screens too. So I think there's low hanging fruit for him to get better, but it really all starts with the shot. But he plays like he to give him some praise, he says all the right things. He loves basketball. He wants to get better. He's super young. He's got a frame that you can add muscle to, and an archetype that like makes sense with this team and in the modern NBA. But you just look at some of the other guys that were on the board, when the Hornets went with him at 6, Edey, Klingon. And I know that they have Mark Williams at center, but just there was some real talent on the board that they passed up to draft Salon. So it was a big swing for the new front office, and he's going to be one of their first sort of like big player dev projects.
Mm-hmm. My wife tells me I have Obi Toppin hips too.
You got to get some yoga, man. People are running specials, I'm sure, right now. So
gotta be. They've gotta be.
Get in there. Get some hot yoga in your life.
Well, Brian, thank you for answering all of our questions about the Hornets, but it is now time to play Andrew versus the Beat, our weekly trivia show where Andrew goes head-to-head with an NBA beat writer. This week's challenger, Brian Geisinger, co-host of the Buzz Beat podcast. Now, Brian, how this works, I've come up with 8 questions related to the Hornets. Some are easy, some are hard. You're going to give me a number between 1 and 8, and it'll correspond to a question. If you get it right, you'll get at least 2 points. If you get it wrong, Andrew will have a chance to steal for 1, and then we'll go back and forth till all the questions have been asked and answered. So all I need from you to start is a number between 1 and 8.
All right, let's go with 1.
Ooh, this is a fun one. The Hornets are currently on an 8-game losing streak. If they hadn't beaten the Pacers on December 8th, it'd be a 17-game losing streak. The longest losing streak in franchise history was 23 during the 2011-2012 season when the then Bobcats finished 7-59. We are going to name all 16 players who suited up for the Bobcats that season. So how this works, Brian, you're going to give me a name, then Andrew will give me a name, and we'll go back and forth until one of you stumbles.
Oh, man.
So, Brian, a name of a Bobcat from the 11-12 season.
Oh, man.
Also, I just want to say it's kind of wild that there were only 16 guys because, like, most of the time when you just have that terrible of a season, there will be like 31 guys who got shot at some point.
Yeah, it's like that Grizz team last year.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Boy, this is a little bit before my time of covering the team every day here. Not to make excuse, but let's go with Byron Mullen here.
Oh, a great start. Byron Mullins. We're big fans here. Andrew.
Shout out to Byron. Don't call me BJ Mullins.
Exactly.
Let's go with Boris Diaw.
Oh, Boris Diaw. Great selection. Back to Brian.
That's a really good one. I think he was maybe traded that season as well. Let's go Gerald Wallace.
Gerald Wallace was not on that team, Brian. Which means, Andrew, you just have to give me one name.
I believe that former Thunder player DJ White was on that team. I think
that is correct.
DJ Augustine was on that team. I think
that is true.
Kemba and Bismack were both on those teams.
Well, Kemba's the low hanging. That's one I should be ashamed of forgetting Kemba.
Yeah,
that would have been year 2 for him. So
it's funny how many guys you were like. Gerald Henderson was on that team. He was the leading scorer.
Yeah,
Corey Maggette, Reggie Williams, Derek Brown, Tyrus Thomas, Jamario Moon, Eduardo Nahara. Sooner.
Wow,
Desanya Diop, Matt Carroll, and Corey Higgins.
Wow.
All right,
Higgins,
Andrew, the board is yours. You just can't choose number 1.
Let's go number 2.
Number 2. LaMelo Ball already has 14 30-point games this season. There are only 4 Hornets who have had more 30-point games in a season than LaMelo Ball has right now. Now, one is Kemba Walker. It's obvious. How many of the other 3 can you name? You get 1 point per correct answer. So these are Hornets throughout their history who just have a ton of 30-point games. And Kemba is number 1. He had I think 84 for his career. I forget how many he had in one season.
He owns the record books for them. Like it's all the scoring and shooting record. They're all his. It's pretty ridiculous.
Oh, what about Baron Davis?
That is incorrect, Andrew. Wow. Not Baron Davis. Brian, can you think of a name?
Oh man, I probably shouldn't go to like the dead ball era, but I'm gonna say Glenn Rice.
That is correct for 1 point.
Can you get? I was
gonna. Okay, one more. I'll say LJ, Larry Johnson.
That one incorrect. The other 2 names.
Wow.
Jay Rich, Jason Richardson.
Oh wow.
And Kelly Tripucka. Kelly Tripucka. I believe that's how you say his name. I did look it up.
Yeah, that's correct.
I want to make sure I was saying it right. Okay.
Wow. That's correct. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I watched a very long video about him getting like his number retired or something at Notre Dame, just waiting for them to say his name so I could learn how to say it. It took them forever.
That rocks. That's amazing.
I know his name because his son played lacrosse at Duke when I did not go. I went to NC State, but He was like in college around the same time that I was there. So yeah,
Wow.
that's the one reason I know the name well.
So Brian, you have tied it up. It's 1-1, and you have control of the board.
All right, let's go 7.
Question number 7. Taj Gibson is 1 for 2 so far this season from 3. How many 3-pointers has Taj Gibson made in his career? Now, before you answer, you get to choose who answers first. You can make Andrew answer, and then you can go higher or lower, or you can answer, and then Andrew goes higher or lower. However, if you do make Andrew answer and he gets it exactly correct, he would get a bonus point. And as a hint,
Oh my gosh.
just to help you guys out a little bit, the most threes Taj Gibson ever hit in one season was 15. Okay, so factor that in.
He's such a mid-range. He also may not have taken a 3 until his like 11th season in the NBA. That's like
I just can't even like imagine him shooting a 3.
It's boy, he's had to like play more this season than I think everyone, including Taj, expected. Andrew, I'll let you set the market here and pick the first number.
Oh my gosh.
Roll the
I don't
dice.
even know like what is reasonable or not. To be honest. I'll say 60. I don't know.
All right, Andrew has set the bar at 60 career 3-pointers for Taj Gibson. Brian, would you like to go higher or lower than 60?
You know what? Just because it would be funny, I'm going to go lower than 60.
Andrew, you got within 5 of the correct answer. And the correct answer was 55, which means Brian gets the points.
You gotta be kidding me.
That was a really good one.
That was a very good guess, Andrew. All right, Andrew, the board is yours. You're down 3-1.
Okay, number 3.
Question number 3. Charlotte has dealt with a ton of injuries this season. Their most played lineup has only played 60 minutes together. Now, to put that in perspective, there is only one team in the NBA whose most played lineup has played fewer than 60 minutes. Which team is it?
Wow. Is it Philly?
Oh, great guess, Andrew. That is correct.
Wow.
That is correct. Tied the game up.
Nice.
All right. So, Brian, the board is yours. Tie game, 3-3.
Okay. Could you forgive me and remind me which numbers have been used thus far? 1, 7.
Oh, are you look at the screen? Look at the screen. Can you see me?
Okay. Oh yeah. I see them. Sorry, I like often I often will minimize the screen. Yeah. Okay, I'll go 5.
Question number 5. Here we go. Oh, another Taj Gibson question. This is fun. Taj Gibson has played for 7 teams in his NBA career. One is Charlotte, obviously. Everyone remembers Chicago and New York. And Andrew obviously remembers his time in OKC. Yeah. Can you name the other 3 teams Taj Gibson played for? And you do get 1 point per correct answer. So I've given you Charlotte, Chicago, New York, and OKC. There's 3 more.
One is Detroit, I believe.
That is correct.
Last season. Oh, man.
That's a good one. I think he only played 4 games for them.
Yeah, I think he had like 1 to 2 10-day contracts with them. I'm sure he's played more this season already.
Why are you so up on where Taj Gibson's been playing? You just rattled that off immediately.
Well, there was a time when he was like one of 2 healthy centers on the roster. It was like 3 weeks ago. So there was a time where we were looking at the Taj Gibson game log, wondering like how this was all going to work out.
What can you learn from his 4 games in Detroit to project how he might do in Charlotte?
Man, other Gibson stops. Detroit. I'm just gonna have to guess here.
Okay.
Memphis.
That is incorrect. Andrew, you can steal 2 points here if you can get the other 2 teams.
I believe he played for the Zards.
He did play for the Zards once upon a time. And can you name the other team, Andrew? The last team. Taj Gibson.
Did you say Minnesota?
No, I didn't. And he did play for Minnesota, Andrew.
Tibbs,
So you
of
get
course.
2 points.
That's a bad one. I shouldn't have missed Minnesota. That's like the thing. All right.
All right, Andrew. You have a 1 point lead. 3 questions left.
Number 4.
Question number 4. The last time Charlotte was in the playoffs was the 2015-16 season. Who had the most dunks for the Hornets that season?
The 2016 season. Who had the most dunks?
Yeah. You were probably watching a lot of Hornets ball back then.
Oh, just deep diving on some Hornets ball.
Getting caught up in the fever.
Dude, I have no clue. Marvin Williams? I have no idea.
It's a good guess. He was on the team. That is incorrect, though. Brian, any guesses?
Cody Zeller.
It is Cody Zeller.
That's right.
The big handsome.
Big handsome.
He was like the best. He and Al Jefferson were the two best centers the franchise has basically had since it returned.
Al Jefferson was legit. His season that one season was memorable. Okay,
All
Brian,
NBA.
you've tied it up.
All right.
2 questions left.
All right. Let's go with 6.
Charlotte has had 13 different players start a game this season. There are only 6 Hornets who haven't started a game this season. Can you name 2 of them?
I hope so. Jared Rhoden.
Jared Rhoden. Yeah.
And yeah, it's been a weird season. Geez, they've had to start so many of these guards like 1 or 2 games now this season. I'll say, oh man, honestly, I'm gonna go Isaiah Wong.
Isaiah Wong. Great
Isaiah
pull.
Wong.
I was really hoping Andrew would get that question because I feel like he would have been screwed. I don't know.
We just watched the Hornets.
I know, but
the other night.
Based on that, do you know who hasn't started for them?
I don't think Trey Mann started.
He hasn't. That's a great one, Andrew. Very good.
He's the one like legit guy that hasn't started. All the rest of these guys are like,
end of the bench
sort of
guys.
like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, like Nick Smith Jr.
Oh,
I don't
Andrew,
think
you would have done great on this question. Never mind. Mm-hmm. Okay, Andrew, final question. If you get it right, you will tie up the game. Okay? Mm-hmm. You get first crack at it, last crack at it, because if you don't get it, game's over, Andrew.
Okay.
LaMelo Ball is averaging 30.1 points per game this season. What NBA team has he averaged the most points against in his career? 29.3. I'm going to give you 4 hints. Okay? 4 hints to help you out. Eastern Conference team has won an NBA championship. The last time these two teams met in the playoffs, Charlotte lost in 7. And Christian Wood played exactly 13 games for both the Hornets and this franchise. Who would you guess, Andrew?
My word.
I gave you 4 hints, Andrew.
I don't know. Detroit? I don't know.
Andrew? That is incorrect, which means Brian wins the week. Brian, who would you have guessed?
Man.
Miami Heat.
It was the Milwaukee Bucks. Christian Wood
okay.
played 13 games for them. I did not remember that. Congrats, Brian. 7-5. High scoring game.
Ouch. That was a high scoring game. Go check out the Buzz Beat podcast. I promise you this. You now know more about the Charlotte Hornets than any of your friends. I promise you that.
It's true.
I promise you that you know more than any of them. Brian, thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely, and thanks for not offering me a PS5 and then stealing it from me as soon as we got off the air tonight.
That would have been a good bit.
Yeah, next time.
Thanks, Brian.
Take care.
All right, Andrew, that was a fortnight of Hornets. And guess what? The next team is also going to get a fortnight because we're having Sam Vecini on the pod next week.
Yeah.
So that means whatever team we land on, another 2 weeks of them, which could be a good or bad thing, depending on how you feel about how Wheel Fandom has gone this season. So we're going to spin the wheel. And let's see who we get. Who will be the Wheel of Fandom team for the next 2 weeks? Will be...
No, it's not. That just can't even be real.
So last week I mentioned that the spinner wheel came so close to choosing the Pelicans, and I was really worried about it for the Pelicans' sake. Well, this week It's the Pelicans. So 2 weeks of the Pelicans, who are currently the worst team in the NBA.
Somehow have only won 5 games. We'll have to get Will Guillory on. I guess that's the true bright spot of this, is that we get to talk to Will again, who's been just an outstanding Slam and Jam guest over the years, and he's even co-hosted the show with me before, and so it'll be great to have Will. I actually think about him often as I'm looking at League Pass, night to night, thinking I feel so bad for Will. They have to watch this team just fart away their season. Okay,
Andrew, hold on real quick. So we just went from the Hornets, who
Yeah.
have won 1 of their last 17,
Oh
to
my
the
gosh.
Pelicans, who have won 1 of their last 21.
My goodness.
So that's 2 and 38, if I'm doing my math correctly.
Listen, I guess the only good thing about this is that we could possibly talk about trades, because I do think that there is
that is true.
realistic possibility of there being some trades. They are at the very least, I'm sure we'll talk about this in a couple of weeks, going to make a trade to shed salary. Like, that is 100% happening.
And we've got 2 tank battles. January 3rd, January 5th, Wizards, back to back. Let's go.
No way.
That's a big tank battle.
Maybe we should just get Josh Robbins on too at the same time to just discuss these games.
Maybe we should just live stream those games.
just let's hop on. Okay, leave us a 5-star review and we'll read it on the podcast, just like this one at Pandiora. It says, with the demise of the Low Post RIP, this has become hands down my favorite NBA pod. The weekday team somehow keeps the convo light but serious. Shout out to Zena and S. The weekend Slam and Jam crew do great deep dives on specific teams. Shout out Alex and Andrew, entertaining without being stupid hot takey. For serious hoop heads only, 5 stars. Thank you so much for that. From OMG It 5 stars. The best basketball podcast ever. Cannot believe no episode this week. Sorry about that. I'm going through a very rough withdrawal and going through all the episodes dating back to 2022 Golden State Warriors title run. Obviously,
Wow.
I'm a diehard Warriors fan. Please come back soon and rescue me. By the way, I cannot believe how good looking both Andrew and Alex are.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that.
Tune into YouTube.
That's right. Check out our YouTube page. And then we have this last one from Jake_Ford97. Slam and Jam rocks. Look forward to the Slam and Jam every week. Andrew and Alex are so great together and have the best trivia game with Andrew versus the Beat. I also want to thank Andrew and Alex personally for the great halftime performance in the Thunder Wolves game and New Year's Eve. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for that review. Hey, if you want more content from Alex and I, you can tune into, we have a Thunder show called Down to Dunk that we post Monday, Wednesday, Friday that you can find here on the Athletic Podcast Network. You can listen to it on the Athletic app. You can also listen to it on Apple, Spotify, and also YouTube. So go check out Down to Dunk for more content from us. Hope you guys enjoy the weekend and the basketball, and we'll talk to you guys again next week.